Sometimes I wish everyone had name tags.
Me too. And you know, same thing for bands, actually. If you're anything like my band, you're playing shows, but you're not the headliner, so nobody knows who you are.
Most people would get a banner printed.
Boring.
So instead, we built this. It's 13 feet long,
60 pounds.
made of plywood
And flowers.
and lights. Today, we're gonna show you how we made it.
And you'll hear some of the new StratosFlower EP along the way.
Shall we?
Let's take a look at a cross-section of what we're going to build. We have some silk flowers, mounted in foam, with a hard plywood back. There's also an outer plywood wall, which holds the light strips in place. The walls have a bit of an odd profile to them. This is because we want to hide the light strips from the audience by recessing them into the frame. Now, the audience can't see the lights, but neither can the flowers. So we also need to remove the rest of the material that was casting that shadow.
Next up, we need to cut some rabbets. We're going to be adding a backing piece to hold the flowers in place, and we don't want that piece to be visible from the side. So we need to recess it into the frame, and that's where the rabbets come in. See, a rabbet is a type of joint, similar to the dados that we cut earlier, except it runs along the edge of the piece instead of somewhere through the middle. And that rabbet leaves us space to slot the back in and hide it from the side. Turning our strips into letters is where this is going to get complicated. Boxes, not so bad, but text is going to be really hard. So we turned to CAD to help us figure it out.
We needed to find a font that we could realistically build. No curves, sans serif, boxy. SF Collegiate, one such font, pretty darn close, so we used that as our starting point.
Depending on the lighting, the letters are going to take on different appearances. Sometimes you'll see more of the plywood, sometimes you'll see more of the flowers, and sometimes you'll see everything together. Getting our letters to look okay in each of these conditions is a delicate balance between the letter size, the border thickness, and the border placement.
All of our frame pieces are going to have mitered corners. This is so that the joints come together like the corners of a picture frame.
On wider pieces, like these ones, this joint is called a case miter. And they're tricky to cut to exact length, especially when every piece is a different size. So instead of trying to solve that one hard problem, cut the pieces to the perfect length while cutting the angles in at the same time, we're going to split it into two easier problems. Cut to exact length first, and then cut the angles into the faces.
For the hard part, the case miters. Each piece is already at its final length, so we need to cut the miters without making the pieces any shorter. Cut too shallow and you won't get a full joint face. Cut too deep and the piece will be too short. The corner of the cut needs to exactly line up with the corner of the piece. That's going to be hard to measure, so we'll avoid measurement altogether. Instead, we're going to grab a piece of scrap the same thickness as our pieces, and then cut it too deep on purpose. If we then add a stop block against that corner, we can lock this measurement into place. This means that we're going to still know where the corner of the cut is even after we remove the scrap. We can swap it out for one of our real pieces, and we know that the corner of the cut is exactly going to line up with that corner of the piece. Every cut will run exactly to the corner every single time. The best part is that this setup can be reused for every piece with this joint angle, no matter how long they are. For the more extreme angles, my table saw doesn't go quite far enough, but the miter saw does. So I had to carefully cut a few joints vertically.
Unfortunately, on all of these pieces, I screwed up the length calculation, and they are all about an inch too short. So gotta rebuild them all.
Hey, Nat.
Yeah, what's up?
Why do you have so many clamps?
You can never have too many clamps.
Okay, well, I appreciate your ensemble here. For this glue up, we have a lot of joints, some pretty weird angles. So which of these are we going to be using?
None of them.
Clamping squares and corner clamps keep joints square, but they don't actually squeeze the joint together. Fancier blocks like this one do let you squeeze the joint together, but we had too many corners and too many strange angles. Painter's tape works okay for picture frames, but I didn't trust it for glue up this complex.
Instead, we went with spring clamps. They work at pretty much any angle, and they do force the joint together.
The downside is that they will leave a small hole in the piece, but we can fix that later with wood filler. something to hold our flowers in place inside of our letter frame boxes. Our first thought is floral foam. After all, it's made for this type of thing, right? Well, it gets a little expensive when you start buying in the quantities that we needed for this project.
This is really nasty waterproof.
No matter what cutting method we tried, we always ended up with a terrible green, dusty, crumbly mess. That is probably known to the state of California that cause cancer, maybe. So we use this rigid foam building insulation instead. It's pretty cheap. You can buy it in bulk from your big box hardware store, and it's easy to cut, either with a knife or, even more fun, a hot wire cutter.
However, a hot wire cutter is a big, expensive piece of specialized equipment that most woodworkers may not have access to in their shop. So we're going to use a CNC.
roses are red
And violets are blue.
because those are the wavelengths.
They reflect back at you.
This means that as we change the color of our lights, each flower will respond differently. If we shine blue light on a red flower, there's no red light for it to reflect, and it gets darker. The same goes for red light on a blue flower. Using a variety of colors for our flowers means that we'll get a more dynamic look during the light show.
That was fun, Nat.
Yep.
But please tell me no plans to change your band name anytime soon.
Thankfully, no. But I guess if we ever have to, we could just scramble the letters that we already made. We got some options. Tomatoes,
Mushrooms,
mattress,
falsettos,
seafloors,
tortfeasors,
laser warts,
forearms,
footwears,
waterleys,
rotators.
florets.
Red floss.
I mean, at this point, we probably just confuse the audience with all of these random words, and they're not going to remember the actual name of my band.
Yeah.
I guess we could always just end the video with the sign spelling out